Boom! What's up, everybody? Lexi Funk. We finally did it. We made it. Just so everybody knows, this might be the most famous person I've had on in podcast history. It's taken 13 months to get Lexi Funk booked for a podcast, so I'm pretty geeked up. Yeah, dude, I'm pumped.
I'm
Appreciate you
excited to
being
be
here.
here.
All right, before we get going, as always, wild or funny story. What you got for everybody?
So back from my high school gymnastics days, I went to back when it was JO Nationals, and I had a few of my teammates from my club gym that were there as well. And you know how they have the numbers that like you have to clip onto your
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah.
So my club coach had told them it had gotten all like wrinkled and stuff, from just like being in someone's backpack or something. So he said like iron it out to like
Mm.
flatten it out. So they just took the iron from the hotel room and just went straight onto the paper and like actually burned a hole through the number that was supposed to be on my back for competition. So they didn't want me to freak out about it and they like called my coach and was like, "What do we do?" So they ended up like taping it down so almost like it was like laminated. Um,
Yeah.
but they like kept it a secret from me. I had no idea. I even at one point they like put it on my back for competition. And I was like, wow, this is so nice. They like laminated our numbers for us this year. And I got like super excited. And anyone that knows me, I love laminating all of our like conditioning sheets and things for, so I don't know
That's
if
funny.
that's where my obsession with that.
Yeah.
But it was just super funny that I like noticed it, but it just kind of like went right over my head and they were all freaking out trying to figure out how to keep it from me so I didn't think about it during competition.
That's hilarious. Well, I guess what do you do if you lose that? Like, can you?
I have no idea. I don't know if I'm pretty sure they didn't have like multiples of every
Yeah,
race.
yeah.
I think I have no idea what would have happened.
Because I feel like there can't be like there has to have been somebody in the history that's lost one, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you take your own piece of paper and just like write your number and hope for the
just
best.
Sharpie, like people do at camps, just like here's my number on my arms.
Exactly.
Like, oh damn, dude, I love it. I love it. Well, cool. Now that you've kind of ventured from, you're not far removed in terms of like being athlete, like getting into the coaching world, is obviously, I think one of the things as a coach in your brain you think about constantly is like, how do you pull potential out of people? Is I think about it from the frame of, okay, there's doors inside this person that they've probably closed off. It's, do they know that the doors are there? Do I need to shine light on the doors? Or do I just need to like help them open those doors? And so how do you come about it from, or like what's kind of your, I don't really like this word, but philosophy or just like your personality in terms of helping people understand potential is probably a good word, understand what their potential is. Because I think at the beginning, we all sell ourselves short, right? Just kind of naturally as human beings, a little bit, probably as 18, 19-year-old, like young women too, just naturally, it's kind of, it's like, no, like there's a reason that you're here. And so, kind of, how do you go about helping them realize what that is? And then part B of that a little bit is being able to pull some of that potential, or like I say, it's like unlock those doors for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and this is one of my like favorite parts of the job, is really getting to know each athlete on an individual level, and kind of being able to learn what works for them. And a lot of it, since we're getting them in their college years, they've had a lot of experience like in their club careers or wherever they came from prior to college to kind of like figure out some of those things, like what coaching styles they've worked with, that may have worked or may have not worked, and just like their experiences in general so far with the sport. Um, I think it's really fun to kind of dive into that a little bit and
Yeah.
what what their experience has been before, and maybe they're open to trying something new when it comes to that. But I really like individualizing and getting to know what works for them, and it's kind of like a game, if you will.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, to like test it out and see what works for each person. But that's the fun part, like when it finally clicks and you get them to understand and you were part of that process. I think that is super exciting and super rewarding when that does happen. And I think part of like drawing it out of them is using that information and then really like diving into that. So I know that some people might need a little bit more like motivation or encouragement. They really need to be built up. That helps their confidence. That's great. Then you really tap into that. But
Yeah.
then some people might need a little kick in the butt, like,
Yep.
come on,
Yep.
let's
Yep.
get going. Like they aren't going to respond to you being super positive and sunshine and roses, that kind of a thing. They need a little bit more stern or whatever it looks like for them. So not only using that, but also like applying it in the gym and everything that we're doing to make sure that they're getting the most out of what they can do.
Yeah. It makes me think of, I remember when we talked about like in the past is you've mentioned like y'all do, like you guys there do a pretty good job, or not pretty good, like you do a good job of staying in contact with athletes throughout the season. Is I forget how frequent you said it was. It was like weekly or monthly, almost check-ins, and you had a name for it and things like that. Is like, where did that come from? Because I'm a big believer in that. I think that's, I always say is I encourage the athletes to do kind of do the same as well. Because I was like, when are the two times that you talk about season? And they're like at the beginning, at the end. I'm like, yeah, but there's this huge race in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Like when the nitty gritty. And so what's kind of propelled you guys to, in a good way, like force those conversations, right? Force the sit downs. And the reason you talked about like connections. And so that made me think of that in terms of like, it's probably a good time to continue to build those connections and those relationships with them. But at the same time, getting the potential out of them. And so, yeah, kind of where did that come from? And like, how have you guys evolved and implemented that?
Yeah, I think as a staff, we all have a growth mindset. Like we want to make sure that when people come to Pitt, they leave better than when they came here.
Right.
And that we're helping them grow not only in the gym with gymnastics, but also in school as people, like all of the pieces that make you you. So I think that's something that we do dedicate time. And that was something that Casey Joe had brought to Pitt, that she wanted to do those weekly meetings where it kind of just depends on what the team needs that week. And
Yeah.
I helped lead those this year, so that was a really fun process. But just like kind of analyzing where the team's at and meeting them there and like having them giving them the opportunity and the space to kind of get to know each other a little bit better, but also sometimes it's getting to know themselves a little bit better and where they can grow individually. Or just sometimes it's a moment to talk about what we're doing really well and kind of give each other a pat on the back. And like I said, it just depends on that week or that time of the year what we feel like the team needs. But it's really cool that we can set aside that time to give them the opportunity for that growth.
Yeah. I think the bragging piece is like the big domino. I think naturally, at least in my experience too, not everybody, but I feel like a good majority are really good at like disempowering themselves, right? Is I call it living in a yeah, but world. You know,
Yeah.
anytime anything good happens, it's like, yeah, but, and then they like literally disempower it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's almost why I'm curious of like your experience with this is like when good things happen and somebody compliments you or like gives you a shout out or calls you out like in a celebratory way in front of everybody like, oh, it's so weird, right? And like there's this cringy moment when it should be something super joyful, super exciting, and on the flip side of that is when bad things happen, it's easy to agree, right? It's like, yeah, you're not doing your, I know I suck, blah, blah, blah. And we go down like the rabbit hole. And so it's
Yeah.
like they're like really addicted to taking anything good and putting it in the paper shredder and like forgetting about it forever.
Yeah.
But at the same time is so easily talking about all the things that they didn't do, all the things that went wrong, all the reasons why they're not good enough or whatever it is. I guess, do you experience that? And how do you guys go about, kind of reinforcing more of like the win side of things, the celebration side of things?
Yeah, that I like that question a lot. I think part of it is like everyone talks about social media being kind of a part of that mentality that everything's about comparison and you're always like, seeing the best out of people on social media and then it makes you think differently about what you're doing or what you're feeling. But
Yep.
I think the other part of it too is just kind of the nature of our sport in some way. Like you go out to do a routine and you're being told everything that you did wrong in the routine, right? Like that's what happens when you're getting a score. And that's kind of the nature of our job too, is that when we see you in the gym, like we're here to tell you how to get better, which inherently is what you're doing wrong. Um,
Right.
I think a lot of that comes from our messaging, where if we can frame it a different way and um, give a little bit more power and attention to the things that you are doing well. And it's kind of funny because we almost do the yeah, but with our coaching, like you kind of have to do a little bit of both. Like I will tell them all the time, like, yes, you did that so much better. However, we still need to work on this and this. And I think as long as, like I was talking about, you have built those relationships and you've had those conversations with the athletes, I think they understand that we're there to make them better and to help them grow. So I think they understand that it's coming from a place of wanting them to continue to improve, and it's not like just telling them things that they're doing wrong. But we also do a lot of things like we do shout outs after practice where they go around in a circle and they just tell someone else like something that they did good that day. So I think things like that in a group setting definitely help, especially make people more comfortable being told something they did well in front of a group,
Yeah.
kind of, get them used to that. But we also talk about like wins. Like this year we did something before a few of the competitions, like what would a win look like for this meet, and kind of taking it away from what the scores are and what the judges are going to think of our routines, but a little bit more of what is in our control. And I think that was something that our team responded really well to because we can go out and we can do gymnastics, but at the end of the day, it's up to the judges how they think about it. So that's not something that we can control, but we can control our mindset on what we're going to do that
Yep.
day in competition.
Yeah. I One of the biggest things for me is words matter, language matters. And so two things that stand out is what you just talked about. There is, even I've had to learn this. You can give, right? So it's like the one of the and versus but, right? And so is you can give a compliment, you can be like, hey, that was great, but blah, 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 blah. And then the way that it's perceived, it's like, okay, well, you didn't actually mean the compliment. Or you could give the compliment, you could be like, hey, that was great. And remember, da 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 da. And it's like they smush together. It's like the way that the brain like processes those things. And
Yeah.
so to me, it's like little things like that are super fascinating of how just one word can literally change the entire meaning of how somebody perceives what you're saying. And then the other side of that too is I think defining words and what you guys talked about when you talked about winning, like we get to each week define what winning is, I think is super cool because if you go in a room and you ask people like, hey, what does winning mean? Honestly, probably 80% of the room will define it as first place, being the best, right? Whatever it is. And it's like, maybe, but in this scenario, it's like you literally get to define what winning is. You get to define a word this year I've liked to use interchangeably is like success. Okay, what does success look like for us after this week, after this month, after this year, right? And so it's just being able to frame things in a way that like actually give it meaning, right? Because I think that I'm curious about this and maybe some of your definitions a little bit too of you see this in sports a lot. There's just so many words that are literally thrown out. Actually, there was a uh, recruit or a potential recruit going somewhere and they're like, oh, like you should go talk to Ryan. So like having a conversation and it's like I was like, what do you want? Da, 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 tells me. And I was like, okay, what do you think is like the biggest gap? Like what's holding you back, right? And this person was like, yeah, it's definitely like confidence and belief. And I was like, well, great. Like, what's your definition of confidence? just thought, and she like spit something out. And then I was like, and you said, and belief, like they're two different things, but you kind of define confidence and belief as the same thing. And so it's like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for confidence? Are you looking for belief? Are you looking for trust? And I was like, this person was like, I was like, yeah, it gets chaotic, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no like definitive thing of, I can't tangibly know. It's like, okay, this is what confidence means. This is what belief means. And so I guess for you is what are some of those were a big one in y'all sport, right? Consistency. It's like, great. What does that actually look like? I always reference like basketball free throws. It's like, I want to be consistent. Love it. Is that 2 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 8 out of 10? Like, let's give it and give it meaning for you, right? If you're Steph Curry shooting free throws, you define consistency probably a little bit different than if you're Shaq, right? It's just, just to each individual, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so what are some of those things that, like winning, that you guys really focus on, or maybe just even you personally, of making sure that like you give actual things meaning?
Yeah, I think one thing like and you kind of mentioned this would be like failure and success. Like
Mm-hmm.
what people say they're like they have a fear of failure or they're afraid to make mistakes and I feel like that's a consistent thing that we deal with in our sport. Um like what does failure mean? Like and that can be different for everyone, but I think one thing that we try to emphasize is that we're just like gaining information. Like everything that we
Yeah.
do, like you may think it's a failure, but it's only a failure if you're not learning from it. So
Hmm.
you can go out and you can have a mistake. That's perfectly fine. But now you have that information on how you can approach it maybe a different way so that doesn't happen again and you don't repeat the same things over and over again. So I feel like failure would definitely be one of them. And I would agree. I think confidence is one of those things that people throw out there that they don't know exactly how to achieve it or what it would look like when they achieve it, but it's like I'll know when I feel it kind of a thing. Um, but like how do you get there, right? And I think that's like the gap that people don't know how to get from point A to point B.
And I think it's interesting because so many people, right, is this same person was like, I don't like I'd say one of the most common responses, especially when it comes to confidence, is I think it's kind of a defense mechanism because they don't really know, is the brain automatically starts to go, it's like, why did it's something that I feel, I don't know how to describe it. And I was like, great. I understand that there probably is some level of like feeling to confidence, right? You can really know like when you've stepped into that mode. And at the same time, though, like if you can't describe it, it's probably not real. And so I had a mentor once tell me, it's like, if it's always up here, it's never real until like you can get it down on paper, right? Or it's something that you can like actually talk about.
Yeah.
And so I think helping them realize is, for me, that is like the hard work, right? Is to take the 10 minutes, the 20 minutes, the 30 minutes, whatever, a day, right? That could be the most beneficial thing you do all year, is to sit down. I was like, okay, what does this actually mean to me? And if I can get clear on that, it's the same with a tangible outcome. If you don't know what you want, then your actions and your decisions, you don't know if it aligns towards, it's very different if you want to be a national champ versus if you want to be a regional champ, right? It's like it just like drastically different. You're going to behave and make certain different decisions.
Yeah.
But I think helping them realize is, if you can't describe it, probably not good.
Yeah. I think one thing with confidence, I've like recently gotten more and more into like manifestation
Yeah,
and goal setting and things like that. And I'm a huge believer. Like I think that you can decide what things are going to look like and that's like half the battle is like having that in your brain and kind of like setting up whether it's a goal that you're trying to look for or if it's the confidence that you're trying to get, like you can start that in your head first. And that's like step number one is just believing that things are a certain way or that you can do a certain skill or that you can hit under pressure, or you can get a 10, like anything that you're looking for. I think that you can like visualize and you can manifest that for yourself. And that's where you're gonna see the success maybe happen a little bit sooner.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's funny you say that. I would say whether it's an individual, a team, whoever, like the first conversation I ever have in it, like the camps that we've been out, like literally is when they did the skit, right? Like, they made fun of me. This is the word that they wrote on the board because it's the ability to make decisions. And most people are not good at making decisions. Most people, um, like even with a buddy watching picking out what you want to watch on Netflix takes 45 minutes, right? It's like to decide what you want to eat for dinner. You and a friend sit in the car for an hour and then eventually figure out it's like, I guess we'll get Chick-fil-A again for the
Yeah.
15th time, right? It's like people really struggle with that. And so to your point is step one is deciding what it is that you actually want and what that looks like. And I think that people don't understand the power in that is towards the end of the year, especially with teams. I'm like, if I could give you one gift, what do you think it would be? And again, they've like confidence, belief. I'm like, maybe like those are good. I was like, honestly, if I could give you a gift, it'd be the ability to make decisions, but not just make any decisions, the ability to make decisions fast, right? Because if I can make a decision in a day and it takes you a week, after a week, I'm 7 times ahead of you. And so the faster I can just like bam, 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 it's like I'm just moving right along while everybody else is still thinking.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that there's an extreme superpower that people look over and don't understand. Like that is makes you a really powerful person to make decisions. I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, and the coolest thing is when you can get an entire team on board with that like same vision or that same manifestation, if you will. You can like feel it when you show up on meet day and everyone is locked in and ready to go. And it's no surprise that those are some of the best meets that happen in my experience because everyone's just like bought into the same kind of energy and it like takes you from beginning, start to finish, right?
Yeah, and it gives you a I've started to learn and understand is yes, people want confidence. I'm like, but really what you want is certainty, right? Like you want to walk in the arena and know like with absolute certainty you're going to crush, right? Like you're going to do your thing. And to your point, when you get a team, if they've made a decision together, is I would say you're willing to talk about those things more. And we talk about things that we're certain of, right? Is I'm going to have a conversation centered around the things that the information, the knowledge that I have that I'm certain about. And so if it's an outcome or a goal, manifestation, it's like the more you talk about it, the more you put it out there and have a level of like certainty behind it that it is going to happen. Weird how things just start to unfold.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a
Um,
combination, like you were talking about, like being able to make a plan or have those decisions, but also like having the belief that it's going to happen the way that you want it to. But then, like, the other piece of that is you have to understand that things you can manifest all you want, but like if it doesn't go your way, you just like adapt and continue to move on. Like, you can't assume that it's going to go exactly how you had planned it, and that's okay. But the idea was that you like put that out in the universe like
yeah.
wanted in the first place.
Well, I think too is that's another big piece getting people to understand. This was a like when I very first hired my first mentor, this is one of the things that she really, really helped me out with all like manifesting and all that stuff is she was like, Ryan, you don't care how. She's like, you can have a picture in your brain, but ultimately, what is it that you want? And I was like, the outcome. She's like, 100%. So as long as you're talking about it from that frame, you don't care how you get it, right? Because actually, I'm going to nerd out for a second. She gives this like really good analogy is she was like, Ryan, you're like, imagine like a forest, right? And she was like, you're like a mouse scurrying on the ground, right? She was like, universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it, is like an eagle. It can see everything from above. And so you can only view it from like one narrow window and you think this is the only way how I'm going to get it, but there's infinite possibilities, right? There's infinite opportunities. And if you just kind of continue to focus on what it is that you want and live in that world, then the eagle, if you will, so to speak, it can deliver in a multitude of ways. It's just not getting caught up in like, this is how it has to be. And if it doesn't do this way, and just getting so
Yeah.
frustrated.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I've had way too many circumstances where I get frustrated that it didn't go the way that I had planned or the way that I thought it would, but everything works out the way that it's supposed to. And you look back and you're like, yeah, yeah, everything like was laid out exactly how it was meant to, and it turned out perfect. I couldn't imagine it any other way.
Right.
I feel like now going through that however many times, you can have a little more trust in the process and know that there are maybe 100 different ways that you can get to that one outcome. It might just not be the way that you thought it was going to.
Well, and I think too, tying it a little bit with decisions, most people struggle at the beginning to make a decision because they're trying to find the perfect path,
Yeah,
right? They assume and believe there's only one way to go about this. And so they sit and never actually make a decision because they can't, it's the perfect movie script, right? They can't quite articulate that very perfect script.
yeah,
And one of the things a mentor helped me, again, practicing on my ability to speed up making decisions was in the beginning, the first decision might just be a directional decision, right? And so you make that decision, things don't go your way, but literally, like you just said, is now you have new information, right? And if you utilize that, it's like, okay, next decision, right? It's like I'm more equipped, I'm more knowledgeable, right? And sports is it's new experiences, right?
for
Like now you have new experiences to be like, ooh, like, oh, I didn't like the way that I felt on that one, right? And it's like, okay, now how do I make an adjustment, a decision here to change the way I go about it, change the state that I'm in, or the way that like I frame this? But yeah, it's most people I don't think actually use their information or experiences.
yeah. Which it's tough. I think it takes a lot of like self-reflection and being able to kind of sit with those moments and some of the things that maybe aren't didn't quote unquote work how you wanted them to, but just to kind of sometimes take it with a grain of salt and be like, okay, this happened and like let's move on. What's the next thing? And just kind of be adaptable with it.
Yeah, it somewhat reminds me of another common one. I'm curious if you get this. Not a lot, but more than I would have imagined at especially in the in the college world is people fear people have a fear of, well, I don't want to put too big of a dream. I don't want to put too big of an outcome because then what if I don't get it? And I'll never forget the very first, I had to think on my feet fast. The very first time somebody asked me that is like, I always believe it's got to be stories or analogies, right? If I just tell you, it's like, no, it's okay. Just go do the next thing. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't really feel any different. Thanks. But like, I still don't want to dream big.
Yeah.
And so, like, it came, like, the first thing that popped in my head, I was like, okay. I was like, do you do like Christmas or birthday lists? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, how long have you been doing that? I was like, I don't know, like 12 years. I was like, okay. So you've been doing a Christmas list for 12 years. I was like, in 12 years, have you literally gotten 100% every single thing you've ever asked for in your Christmas list? And they were like, well, no. And I was like, so did you
If
just
so,
stop
they're
asking?
lucky.
Right? Yeah. Spoiled brat. Or you could argue, are you asking for things big enough? Right?
True,
Is at
true.
what point do you just go like, mom and dad, I want a car? It's like you're not getting a car, right? Like what
Yeah, you're
I want a
12.
house, right? Like, yeah, you could just keep going and going and going and push the boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, okay, so there's been probably many years that you didn't get what it is that you wanted. And I would argue that probably a lot of those things are like the big things. Maybe you wanted like this brand new laptop, right? And it's a $3,000 laptop, and like you didn't get it that year. I think so. Did you just stop making Christmas lists and stop asking for things that you desired? And they're like, well, no. I was like, kind of the same thing here, right? Is because you now have the experiences. Honestly, I was like going into the next month, the next year, you're using your word of like self-reflection is, do I still want that thing? Is it still relevant? Great, let's just put it back down, just like you would a gift. Or a lot of times in Christmas, if you don't get it, there's something new. You realize you have a new experience. And in this case, it's like maybe you realize there's a new level of potential. Maybe that's really not what you wanted. It's this thing over here. And so just helping them recognize that again, if you use your experiences to your advantage, like you kind of can't come out on the losing end because you're always growing and expanding along the way.
Yeah, I almost feel like there should be a greater fear of not reaching your potential than there is of not achieving a goal. Because like you said, if you're shooting really high, and I do think that goals should be somewhat realistic. Um,
Totally. Totally.
like I should not make a goal that I'm going to make the Olympics as a gymnast because I don't train anymore. Like that that just doesn't make sense. But if it's within your realm of what you can achieve, but it's kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit. Even if you don't achieve that, you're still gonna be closer to your max potential than if you set the bar too easy and you achieve it, but you're like, I might have had a little bit more in me that I could have done. So I feel like that's something that's huge, and I hope people continue to learn to push the boundaries. And I don't know, again, if that's something that social media is playing an impact because there's a lot of conversations on like what people are doing and judgment and comparison that comes with social media. So sometimes it feels a little bit intimidating to come out and say, this is my goal, and you're wondering if people are going to think you're capable of that. But I think at the same time, it doesn't matter. If it matters to you and you think you're capable, then that's awesome. I think you should run with it.
Totally agree. Is I even literally exactly what you just said is that's usually how I'll frame it. Cause I'm like, what's your biggest fear? And they're like, failure. I'm like, no, it's not. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're not actually scared of failing. And they're like, okay, so what am I scared of? I'm like, your real fear is fear of being judged, right? Because if you fall off the beam and there's no one in the arena, or if you're just in the practice room by yourself, do you care? And they're like, no. I'm like, but you failed, right? Like, so it's really not the failure. It's the judgment that comes along. What if there's 10,000 people and now what are they going to say about me, right? Or if I announce said thing is now what are people going to talk about me is and I think helping them also realize too is going back to decisions is when you make a decision, if you're not misunderstood, then you're literally just going to land where everybody else is. Because to be exceptional by definition means you are the exception. And so is if I'm dreaming out things and I like everyone's like, yeah, like, and I just fit right back in with everybody else, I'm still gonna live in that world,
Yeah.
right? And so it's the moment again, it's finding that sweet spot of what is it that I want to dream of, and that's like one of the things I preach. I'm like, hate is the lead indicator. When you become misunderstood, you now know you're on the right path because you remind people of all the things that they should be doing that they're not doing, that they know they should be doing,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like that, like and so I think that that can become very freeing a little bit because now it's judgment almost becomes a good thing because it's like, oh, like you're literally checking the box for me that I am headed down the right path because I don't want what you want. And so by definition is like I have to choose something different that completely stands out. And I think to your point, that is the hardest part. Yes, social media, but also just friends and like your own teammates, right? It's like, why do you want that? Why are you working so hard? What is it? What about that? It's like, you don't understand, right? Like, and I think it almost encourages you to be different, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like even if someone comes out and they have this like extravagant goal that seems maybe a little bit further than what their current potential is right now, I think it's almost intimidating, and it kind of gives them that sense of like they must be really confident in themselves and they must really like be willing to put in the work, and it's kind of inspiring for me. But I'm also from a coaching standpoint, so I know like not everyone would maybe view it that way, but if I hear
Right.
an athlete have like big goals and dreams, I would never be like, wow, I don't think you can do that. But that's again my role as a coach to be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get you there. So I think that's something that I think would be great for people to learn to shoot a little bit higher. I feel like I've always liked the quote, shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars.
Right.
And I like that same concept of like you're going for the moon, but even if you don't make it there, like you're still with all the stars and you've reached more potential than if you were to just shoot a little bit lower.
Yeah, and I think of actually I'll say the name. She's since graduated, but there was a girl at TW, Daisy Woodring, and I remember so we were like working. We ended up like being around each other for like 3 years, and I'll never forget about halfway through, about a year and a half in, kind of the same concept of have these big dreams, have these big aspirations. These are the things that I want. Is how do I let go of kind of obsessing over the outcomes so much? Because if I don't get it, it is going to feel a bit crushing. It's going to feel like, was it worth it? Was it worth putting all this time, attention, and energy, these, 2, 3 years of my life to go after this thing that I never got? And I said, yes, and here's why. I said, because ultimately, yes, you do want the thing, but what you really want to understand and know is that you have become more as a person and as a competitor. So if you strive to do those things means you have to make decisions that are in alignment with being a champion or whatever it is, right? And if you constantly live that out for another year and a half, at the end, even if you don't get it, is who you are as a person is going to expand well beyond if you never even went after that. So it's now whatever you're chasing after, you're operating from a completely different level. So when you do get out on a job, you do get out on a career, or let's just say you have another year left in a season, that's where the light bulbs start to go off because it's like, whoa, I grew exponentially in 1 year, didn't get what I wanted. Yet at the same time, I'm in a completely different starting place. And I think that's where most people hiccup is they grow all this way, they don't get what they want, and they literally crumble it all up and throw it back down. And it's like they go back to start at the same place. I'm like, no, it's like you built this entirely new person. You're at a different starting place. Like, quite frankly, it's going to be easier if you for the next year, right? Or if it's going into a job or a career, it's like you're going to have that level of confidence. You're going to feel more powerful because you built that person along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an athlete that we just talked to that is like now graduating, and she was saying that um, we kind of asked them like, what have you learned throughout your experience in college, and like, how is it going to help you in the future? Just kind of like some self-reflection things like on their careers. And she was like, I have dealt with some really hard things in the
Hmm.
sport, and I've overcome them. And now on my day to day, it's like anything's easy. Like I walk into a test and I think it's going to be hard. It'll be fine. Like I've done gymnastics or I've overcome this in gymnastics. So I think it's again setting you up for success to continue to, when you overcome those hard things, like now, like you said, you've grown and expanded who you are as a person and what you're capable of, that you can keep kind of climbing that ladder and getting better.
And it's like it's the thing that nobody can ever take away from you,
Yep.
right? You know, I get it. Like winning championships, like all the tangible things, they are wonderful. Totally. I'm all about winning and like I love that, right? Results are a thing. At the same time, like in 10 years, like nobody like unless you continue to repeat it, right? It's you know, you can probably still utilize some of your like athletic success, right? Like you're not far removed. Remove yourself 15, 20 years out of the sport and you start to talk about like when it's like, yeah, you don't get it. Like it's not the same, right? Like walk a day in my shoes. It's like, no, it's probably harder than it's like, no, it's not, right? It's like it becomes almost irrelevant. But the one thing that they can't take away is how that evolved you and the way that you think, how that grew you. And it's like those are things that again, it's like unless you just decide you don't want to use them anymore, it's the one thing they can't take away, or no nothing or no one can take away.
Yeah. And kind of going back to confidence, I feel like that ties in a little bit because the more that you
100%.
challenge yourself and the more that you put yourself in situations where you might quote unquote fail and have to learn and like overcome some hardship, that's going to build up that confidence that you can achieve anything and you can overcome anything the more that you do that. So maybe that's the recipe for confidence.
Well, I mean, that's similarly to how I define it is having undeniable proof you are who you say you are, right? And
Mhm.
so when you can write down and define this is who I am, confidence comes from knowing that you lived that person
Yeah,
like 90% of the time, right? It's like, well, this is who I am. It's like, okay, tell me how this person thinks, acts, feels. How do they behave? How do they make decisions? How do they do this? And so it's, are you operating from your old self or your new self? And if my new self is a greater version of me and I have proof and evidence that I've made decisions and lived that way, I can walk in a room and feel confident. I can walk in a room and feel powerful. It's when I don't live that and I don't have any proof, well, no wonder you don't have confidence. And it
exactly.
goes back into it's kind of the imposter syndrome, right? It's like I feel like an imposter. And I mean, I would never probably bluntly say it like this to somebody like off the bat, but it's like you feel like an imposter because you are an imposter, right? Is you know you should be doing all these things and behaving in a certain way, and you don't do it. And so when you get into it's like I don't feel like I'm that person. I'm like, you are correct, right? Like that is the definition of you're trying to be somebody. You have not lived who you know you should have lived. And so it's like kind of are an imposter at some level.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So I'm curious. What is this third year, fourth year coaching?
Fourth year coaching.
Go. This is fourth year or going into fourth year?
Uh, this is fourth year.
This is fourth year. Okay, so
I guess. No, this was my fifth year.
yeah, at
Time
least.
flies, let me say.
So within those 5 years is, I guess, what is like leadership kind of meant to you? And obviously, as you continue to grow and expand as a coach, in what ways have like you grown and evolved as a leader? Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things when it comes to leadership is kind of like exemplifying it, like leading by example.
Hmm.
I'm a big believer on if I'm going to ask other people to act and, act a certain way or talk a certain way, like I want to do that as well. And not ask more of other people than what I'm doing myself. So I think just being true to my values and what I believe things should look like, so that I can provide that example for others. Um, and I think just continuing to, like I said, we as a coaching staff, we all have a growth mentality and want to continue to grow and get better. So just being super aware of where my areas of improvement are, and kind of like focusing in on those to um, continue to make those better.
You mentioned values. What are some of those like big ones like for you?
Yeah, I would say communication is probably the biggest one. I'm super big on communication. I think if you have clear and open communication, that solves a lot of problems that maybe don't
Facts.
have to be problems in the first place. So that goes for like our coaching staff, that goes for like with the athletes. A lot of things are a collaboration. So, like I said, I really enjoy building those relationships with the student athletes and in doing that, it kind of creates that open communication where they feel comfortable coming to us with anything that they
Yeah.
need. And, I think that just helps us get to know them better. It helps us do our jobs. When we know what's going on with them, we can kind of make better decisions when it comes to training plans and things like that. And we want them to take ownership, which is another one of my values. Kind of like making plans for their own gymnastics. Obviously, we are here to create the gymnastics plan and things like that, but I really enjoy when athletes have ideas on if they come to me and they're like, "Hey, I was thinking about this one skill on bars that I want to try." I'm like, "Great, let's do it." And I think it's really awesome when they're bought in enough to think about their own gymnastics and kind of have ideas on what might work for them. And then we can have that conversation and talk about a plan from there.
Yeah. It sounds like too is probably growth is like a big value for you. Has that always been a thing, or is that like post college? Is that something like I know for me is like the example I'll give was watching. I don't even remember. Probably this was first year owning a business, second year. It was early on like owning a business, and I was watching some YouTube video, right? And it's like talking about how reading was like so important and like all the most successful people like read, and I was like losers, right? Like wow. And then all of a sudden, like literally started picking up books and started reading and diving into things. And you talk about like kind of manifesting a little bit. It's like things just started to unfold for me. Things, I don't know, things just started to appear, opportunities. And like I became more sure and certain of myself, just, learning and growing. Honestly just really the way that I saw the world. It was always through one lens. And so that opened my eyes into where it's like, yeah, like I think that that's kind of a little bit of an obsession for me in terms of growth. If I had known that in college, probably would have been a little bit different, right? And so I'm just kind of curious how, like, when was that a thing for you?
I think it was something that I was always naturally drawn to, like constantly looking for something new to try, something
Hmm.
new, like a new skill, a new way to continue to get better. Like, I think in college, there's a lot more opportunities just there to take advantage of versus when you leave college, you kind of have to make those opportunities happen and you have to like find them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like I was a captain my junior and senior year. We had a lot of like community service events that we could just sign up super easily and go to on a weekly basis. We had like a leadership book club that was like within
Hmm.
the athletic department that I was a part of that again was just like super easy right on campus. Like um just a lot of things that I feel like were kind of part of that growth mindset, but were there and easy to access. But now it's a little bit more, I think it was post college when I actually put like a name or a title to it, like having a growth mindset and like
Hmm.
actively trying to think about areas that I could improve on, and then like seeking out opportunities and ways that I can grow and expand that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been crazy. Yeah, I know like for me it started with really just books. I'm not a big podcast person, even though I do podcasts. Haha, kind of
Love
odd
it.
there. I don't know, like I like just like and I don't do audiobooks. I don't do like the Kindle or I don't know. There's something about like having the book and I'm highlight like so I can like go back. It's like, okay, what are all the major points? Honestly, is I used to read, highlight as I would read, and then I would go type up everything that I highlighted. So I almost had like my own cliff notes, like
Yeah,
to the
cool.
book. Um, and then I think the next step for me was hiring mentors is kind of like, I mean, it is having your own coach, right? Is you don't see a lot of the blind spots, or I don't know. It's like if you have somebody that's already ahead of you, it's like, yeah, it's probably not a good decision, right? It's like I did the same thing as well. And so just I think one of the who is it? It's like Tony Robbins says, like, the power of a coach is like the ability to collapse like time. So you can take like 10 years and like collapse it into 6 months. You can collapse it into a year. Yeah, I think that's been super impactful, like for me, I know personally.
Yeah, I feel like I also like having a physical book in front of me, but I recently signed up for a half marathon, which is in a couple weeks.
Dude, kudos to you.
You. So while I'm running, I have listened to like audiobooks
Mm,
and podcasts because
mm.
that helps me not think about what I'm doing.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably kill two or three books in a half marathon.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. It was definitely one of those things where like I don't like running, I'll say it. Which is kind of funny that I chose to do a half marathon, but I wanted to challenge myself and kind of do something that wasn't something that I would normally be drawn to do and just like put myself
Totally.
through that process and kind of learn about myself along the way.
Yeah. How much, couple more questions. How much, or maybe not how much, but like what is the way you go about? Because through conversations of like you having a growth mindset, through conversations of like talking about like manifestation and things like that, is it makes me think of like the law of sowing and reaping, right? Is you reap what you sow, right? And it's like if you're always thinking negative, and it's like, well, then you can't expect, it's like you're sowing bad seeds. You can't expect to have a good garden, right? And so, like, what is it in terms of helping? I mean, they're still kind of kids, right? 18, 19, 20, of helping them understand that I'm going to put this very bluntly, but like what you're reaping is what you are sowing. Yes, it's so easy to, I was like, I always go back to like there's two worlds, is there's being a victim and there's being a creator. And when success doesn't happen or things don't unfold your way, it's so easy to be like the weather, right? The judges, the equipment. It's very easy to go externally. I was like, I actually asked this to a team. I was like, what's the hardest part about failure? And looking at me, I was like, it's looking in the mirror and knowing that like you probably like sowed that, right? Like there was something, and that's okay. But now you have new experiences to go back. It's like, did you plant the right seeds, right? Like, don't plant pumpkin seeds and expect to get watermelons, right? It's like kind of third grade-ish, but some people is like, I think that they do that, right? It's like, don't don't train like at this level and expect to achieve this. The seeds don't like you don't reap what you sow. And so how much of it is, or just potentially how do you go about like really helping them understand that, hey, sometimes we got to take a look in the mirror and it's like kind of reaping what you're sowing here a little bit.
Yeah, I think I just my personality, I'm like very blunt, very honest about things. And I have learned how to communicate that in the best way to
Yeah,
athletes.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and it honestly depends on each person and how that conversation looks. And again, that's part of building those relationships and learning how they communicate and how they take information in. But I feel like keeping things very black and white is super
Yeah.
beneficial. The more that you get into kind of that gray area, I think is sometimes when things get lost in translation. So just being like honest with them. If someone comes up to me and they're like, wow, that judge judged me so hard on that routine. I'm like, well, like let's take a look at the video. Like some of the things are there. And again, it's just information. Like, yes, they may have taken your flex feet that other judges might not, or whatever the
Right.
case may be, but you are flexing your feet. At the end of the day, like the feet, like
Yeah.
we can see it, right? So, and I think sometimes they appreciate it because they're not going to get better if they don't know the information or if I kind of feed into the it's somebody else's
Yeah.
fault or problem. Like we can control what we can control. So if this is part of like what we can control, like let's take a look at it and then let's make a plan from there. And I think again, it comes from how you present that information. So if I make a plan then to work on those flex feet and we talk about it and we have that conversation. I don't think it comes out as blunt as maybe it sounds, but um, yeah, I think it's just being black and white with them so that they know kind of what the reality looks like.
Yeah. I love that too, because I think that, especially like in y'all sport, I won't say every time, but probably pretty close is, yeah, there's some gray areas because like with anything, right? Judges are humans. Is like it's psychology too, right? Like, is there bias out there? Sure. It's like, does a parent have a favorite kid? It's like probably. Like, but even as a coach, it's like you wouldn't call it favorites, but there's people that you're naturally drawn to more, right? Maybe they share the same values. They really like growing and reading. And so it's like we're naturally going to spend more time communicating because we just share values. And everyone's like, oh, it's their favorite. It's like, I mean, it's like, it's my quote unquote favorite because we just align with the way that we see the world a lot. And so we hang out more and we exchange in more conversations. So by definition, it is like, I'm going to have a different level of care. That's just human behavior, right? But my point being with that is even with all those things, if there's bias, if there's, human behavior, psychology, whatever behind it is, a lot of times there's more in our control. Like when we stop and like take a look back at it, it's, you know, in y'all sport, right? It's like, well, we got hosed on said event. And it's like, okay, did you do everything possible on other three events? It's like, no. It's like, okay, I get it. This is a thing, but let's do more over here before we go down this rabbit hole first. I think that just kind of like takes back some power.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point. It like puts the power and the control back in your court because if you allow yourself to think it was somebody else's decision, somebody else's problem, somebody else's whatever, then like what can you do about that?
Yep.
Feels like not
Yep.
much. Yeah,
Yep.
you turn it around and you're like, okay, I didn't get the score that I wanted on whatever event, but I can look at the things that I can continue to improve so that it's undeniable that I will get that score that I'm looking for. So I feel like it just kind of, again, keeps things black and white and allows you to take that ownership of your own gymnastics or whatever it is that you're doing so that you kind of have the control to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Last question. If you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message,
Oh
what would your
no.
message be?
Um, just one message, that's so hard.
That's it.
Um,
Or one core theme, like one thought, like,
yeah. I feel like I would say something along the lines of like mindset is everything, and you can choose to create your life the way that you want it to, and
mm,
whatever you think is going to happen will happen.
yeah. Let's follow up with that because it's kind of tied to like manifestation.
Yeah.
How did that like how did that become a thing in your life? Where was that? Like, what was the aha moment with that?
Uh, I don't know if there was like one specific moment, but definitely post college. And I think probably going through the process of trying to crack into the coaching world and it's kind of a small world and it's a little bit hard to
Yep.
get into. So I think going through that process and not having some opportunities work out and then eventually like getting some really great opportunities, I think I realized that everything happens for a reason. And just that goal setting is super important and
Yeah.
like creating this vision of what you want your life to look like. And like we've talked about a few times, like if you imagine someone who is in the position that you want to be in the future, like what are they doing? What are they saying? How are they thinking about themselves? How are they treating other people? Like kind of laying out exactly what that looks
Hmm.
like creates that vision in your head. And then it's easier for you to go out and kind of live that lifestyle and live that life. And then it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with it. I'm here for it. I'm a firm
Yeah.
believer. Like, oh yeah. I call it like for the athletes to where it's like you're talking about like laying everything out. I'm like, paint the picture. Like, show me what it looks like. Paint that picture so vivid, and you can always go back and adjust the picture. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, it's like if you get that picture in your brain and that becomes kind of like your North Star, your guiding force, again, it makes decisions easier. You know how to show up, like you know how to behave, you know how to think, you know how to act, you know what type of questions to ask, you know how to respond to questions. So yeah, I just think that that is such a like central theme going back to the original question of like the ability to unlock doors. It's like well, what is it that you want? It's like okay, it's like oh, I need to unlock this door, this door, this door, this door, right? It's like so yeah. Um, awesome, dude. Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad after 14 years we were able to link up and have a conversation. The most popular person on the planet. Yeah, thanks. And I always close out. I always say it's like at the end of the day is the whole like for me, like the reason behind the podcast is um like stories and I feel like just in conversations, the more little stories or analogies they hear from like other people, it just may just land differently. So, yep, I appreciate your stories. I appreciate your knowledge, your wisdom. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was super fun.
Hell yeah. Until next time, everybody. Peace.